Rati Manjari asked me to speak something, which fortunately I am able to speak about because, well, she asked me to speak about the Krishna book. And fortunately, I'm able to speak about the Krishna book because I was there when the Krishna book was published, when they first hit the street in August of 1970. I was there, and I was also part of a Sankirtan party that was the first party in ISKCON to distribute Krishna book in mass quantities. And I also wrote Prabhupada about the Krishna book. And so, by Krishna's arrangement, I guess I'm the man for the job. Right? A good arrangement. So, she will explain why we're speaking about the Krishna book, but I will give you a little hint. How many are in the warehouse are there? 7,000 Dutch Krishna books.
So 14,000.
14,000. Each means each what?
No,
2 warehouses?
7,000. Part 1, 7,000.
Oh, 7,000 part 1, 7,000 part 2. So there's 14,000 Krishna books. How long have they been sitting in the warehouse?
1981.
Since 1981. That's more than 12 years. Since 1981.
Yeah, there were some more, but that's the latest print.
Yeah.
Maybe later.
So,
first print was 1981.
yeah, there's a campaign to distribute Srimad Bhagavatam, but we don't have Srimad Bhagavatam in Dutch, but we have 7,000 Dutch Krishna books. And Rati Manjari is heading up the campaign, and so she asked if I could talk about the Krishna book and its importance and so on. And then after I do, she'll speak to you a little bit. She'll speak to you a little bit about how you can help in the distribution of Krishna book. Can I see it? I haven't seen the Dutch version. Yeah. Deel in. Deel 2. How do you say it?
Part 1, part 2.
Deel
Del A. Ale. Del L. What's this? In? Deal in. All right. What? Softbound. Okay. So, take yourself back to San Francisco when you were a hippie in your last life. 1970. The Krishna book was, we have to go back because Prabhupada, he didn't know if he was going to finish the Srimad Bhagavatam, and the time that he decided to translate the 10th canto was kind of when he was, I don't know for sure, but it seems around the time he was just starting to translate the 2nd canto or 3rd canto. And so this is 1970, and he's thinking, it's possible I won't live long enough to translate the whole Bhagavatam, and the 10th canto is the cream, so I'll go ahead and translate it. And you might think, well, that's strange because you're not supposed to read the 10th canto without reading the other 9. So what Prabhupada did is he kind of put the whole philosophy within the Krishna book so anybody could read it and understand it. It's basically Bhagavad Gita in the Bhagavad Gita philosophy explaining all the past, around the pastimes. So, Prabhupada needed money to print it. Many of you know the story. He told Shyamasundar, asked George Harrison for $19,000. $19,000 in 1970, I don't know what that was, like 200,000 today or something. And Shyamasundar didn't want to ask, and Prabhupada said, just go ahead and ask and he'll do it. And to save time, to make a long story short, he didn't want to, but then Krishna arranged. And he did, and he was happy that he did. So with that money, they could print the Krishna book, and the books at that point were printed in Japan. And they just started to print right like a week before or something, the Rath Yatra, which was the only Rath Yatra. The Rath Yatra in San Francisco was the only Rath Yatra in ISKCON. And the devotee organizing the printing came back like with 1 or 2 books or something, Krishna books, and he brought Prabhupada a Krishna book, and there was like one missing. He said, well, where's that other one? He said, I sold it to the guy sitting next to me on the airplane. So like this was exciting. It was like brand new. Oh, I have to tell you something else. Do you realize that before the Krishna book, we didn't know what Krishna did or what Krishna does? Like we didn't know. Maybe if you're born a Hindu, you know. We did not know. We had Bhagavad Gita, first canto Bhagavatam, but we didn't have the 10th canto. So the only thing we knew Krishna did was what Prabhupada would tell us in a class. Other than that, we didn't know. Isn't that interesting? Like, I would say we knew 4 or 5, maybe 10 pastimes max, just because we heard them. But other than that, we're worshipping Krishna and we don't even know who he is. Not in detail anyway. So then the Krishna book comes out. Those books were brought to the Rath Yatra and they were like boom, boom, zoom, zoom, bang, bang. I don't know how many there were, like 40, they're all gone immediately. Now, and then subsequently they came. So every temple had boxes of Krishna books. But we only sold magazines on the street, and we never sold big books on the street. So we thought, if you go on the street and try to sell someone a Krishna book, they're not devotees, they won't take it. So we thought the Krishna book's only for devotees. So we never went out with it. And so the only people and the only place that the only people who bought the Krishna book were people who came to the temple. It's the only place we would sell Krishna book. And on a good Sunday feast, we'd sell 1 or 2. And if we had an extraordinary Sunday feast, we'd sell 3. And that was good, because all we were selling was, magazines and a few books here and there. So, one fine day, I think it was November, in Vancouver, Canada, I was the temple president. And I said, there was a holiday, and I said, why don't we take some Krishna books with us? It will be fun to show the books to people. And who knows, maybe someone will buy it. Although none of us believed anyone would buy it. So, we went door to door. It was a holiday, so we went house to house, everybody was home. We all put Krishna books in our bag. 1 or 2 Krishna books. And we started showing, like, who's that on the cover? Oh, that's God and his girlfriend. Okay. Or the hippies, they're on LSD, they're like, cool. That's God. Yeah, that's God. Cool. Other people are like, yeah, okay. Anyway, we would all go. The van would park at the corner, and each devotee would take a block. So when you finish your block, you're back where you started from, right? So we all went around, we all came back, nobody sold a book. And we're waiting for one devotee to come. He was the last one. Guess what happened? Take a guess what happened.
He sold it?
He sold a Krishna book.
Haribo!
Like the first Krishna book ever sold on the street in the history of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And we went insane, because this is the first time big books were ever sold on the street. They were never sold like that. We went insane. And they were $8 in 1970. How much are these?
Well, that depends.
How much are they supposed to be?
Well,
Like 5 or something?
no more. Normally there would be more. Like, I think, Narayani, how much are you? €8.
8 euro each.
For each, huh? Okay.
How much
So-
is that?
It's about like $9.
Yeah, okay.
But that's right, very
Yeah.
nice price.
Yeah, so we were doing the same price 53 years ago. So it was more like $50, so. We were selling BTGs for 25 cents. And $8 is, if I do my math correctly, 32 times the price of a BTG. So it was a big jump. So that's why we thought nobody would be interested because they're not devotees, and who's going to pay that much money? And then he sold one. And when he sold one, I don't know what everyone else was feeling, but I was feeling everything has changed now. Like this has changed the game. We can actually do this. And so what happened was, I think like maybe even a week or 10 days later, a devotee, he was a Canadian devotee, and he was in America, and he was coming back to Canada, and he came to our temple, and he was the most enthusiastic human being God ever created. And he would always say, we got to do something big for Prabhupada. So it's like, if you gave him a big idea, he was ready.
What was his name?
Thakur Haridas, or Haridas Thakur. Big, tall, overpowering, overly enthusiastic devotee. And so I said, Thakur Haridas, we went out and we actually sold a Krishna book door to door. He went ballistic, shot through the roof. He was like, oh my God, let's get out there and do this. So we decided we would go on traveling Sankirtan in the middle of the winter in Canada, which can get colder than it gets here. If you go up high, it's the same weather as Moscow. So we hit the road. And you know why one of the reasons we did this is because Prabhupada said, if you will go anywhere and everywhere to spread Krishna consciousness and not be concerned about where you live and how you eat or sleep, I will take the dust from your feet and put it on my head. We got a letter from Prabhupada to all the temples. He said that. Well, it was a quote and it was sent around. Could you imagine what you would do once you read that? So we had this Krishna book thing in our head, like this is a game changer, we can actually distribute these on the street, and the quote from Prabhupada, just go anywhere. So what we did was, we were like, okay, fill the van with magazines, but fill it with Krishna books, like whatever we had, fill it up. And fill the gas tank up with enough petrol to get to the next city, and don't take any money. Because if we take any money, then we can stay somewhere. So we said, we said, we don't want to have any money, because that way we won't know where we're going to stay and how we're going to eat. Hare Krishna. Welcome to ISKCON 1970. I could tell you other crazy stories, but we'll save that for another class. So we went out into the midnight. We arrived in the next town at 8 midnight in the middle of winter in Canada. And in those days, the only Sankirtan was you would go out on the street and chant. And then some devotees would distribute books. Nobody just went distributing books. That was the preaching. It was basically that in Rath Yatra. You just go out, Hare Krishna, and you just sit on the street and everybody walks by and ignores you, and you try to sell magazines. That was the basic program. And you do that like 8 hours a day. Hare Krishna. And it was blissful. Sometimes, yeah. No, it was always blissful. So, we're out on the street. It's a small town. It's 8 o'clock at night. I don't know, November, something, middle of the winter. We didn't know what to do. We didn't have any money. We didn't know where to go, who to meet. So we just went out on the street. Hare Krishna. You look that way, there's nobody. You look that way, there's nobody. Finally, somebody comes up. And he was drunk. Hey, how are you doing out here, guy? And Thakur Haridas, he goes up to the drunk. And we're all chanting, we're thinking, Thakur Haridas is nuts. He's trying, and he's pulling out a Krishna book. He's like 8 feet tall, so he's looking down, down on you with this Krishna book, And the person's looking up like that. And we're thinking, Thakur Haridas, you're crazy. You're preaching to a drunk guy. at 8 o'clock at night in the town, and he's the only one on the street. And then like 3 minutes later, the guy pulls out $8 and gives him $8, and we're like, oh my God, this Takahari Das is nuts. And now what to do? So we drive around and we find there's a hostel, and we go in, and yeah, come in, it's all free. And they, it looked like a brahmacharya ashram and had bunk beds. And they go, what do you want for breakfast? We told them, we go, okay, we'll make it. They went to sleep, they made us breakfast. We went out door to door. We didn't have any pots, pans, or anything. So we're begging vegetables and pots and pans, because we wanted to go with nothing, because that way we could depend on Krishna. And then we went, and we met a lady, and she was like the aunt of a devotee in Vancouver. She goes, here, take these pots, and take these spoons. So we had everything we needed. And then we went off to the next city, and we just went back in the street. And then Thakur Haridas would go out, and every day he'd sell like 1 or 2 or 3 Krishna books, which was 1 or 2 or 3 more than any other Sankirtan devotee in this side of Brahmaloka has ever sold outside the temple. So we were looking at this. We'd sell 1 once in a while. We were looking at this and we were thinking, this is crazy. This is crazy. And he was addicted. He got addicted to selling Krishna books. It was like, he just like, let me out, let me out. We're chanting around, let me out. he was like, he got so high from selling Krishna books. The first Krishna book I sold, I got so excited, I couldn't find my way back to the van. And it was only a block away. It's like, I sold a Krishna book, because it was like, we didn't think we could do it. It was like, I don't know, so much reciprocation coming from Prabhupada. So, one night, we laid out our sleeping bags, and the tradition was you would boil hot milk. You'd boil cold milk and make it hot. If you boil hot milk, it's already hot, right? So we boil milk, and then we'd have milk, maybe some popcorn or a banana. That was like the tradition. So we're heating up the milk, putting out our sleeping bags, and Thakur Haridas says, I'm going out. I can't stay back. I'm going out. I go, Thakur Haridas, the time takers. I'll be back in a half hour. I got to distribute another Krishna book. He was like so ecstatic distributing Krishna books, because no one had ever done it, and every book was like, oh my God, I just distributed a Krishna book. Half hour he comes back. I said, Thakur Haridas, what happened? He says, I sold a Krishna book. And it was like, I'm saying, it's like a big thing. It's like selling, in those days, it was like selling a set of Bhagavatams and Chaitanya Charitamritas. They go, and so it's like every time he did it, it's like, tell us, what did you say? He said, I told them, I'm in ecstasy. Take this book. And they took it. And they were all atheists. So this is what we're watching. So it was so exciting that we wrote a letter to the devotees in the temple. This is happening. And so many things were happening. And all these Krishna books were being sold. We were like in another universe. And the devotees took that letter and they sent it to Prabhupada. I didn't know that until I got back. They go, your letter was so ecstatic, we just packed it up again and sent it to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada got the letter. And he was so happy. And he said, this is what it means to be advancing in Krishna consciousness. You see an opportunity and you take advantage of it for giving people Krishna. So that's what Prabhupada saw that we were trying to do. And then, the last thing I want to say, and then I'll let Roti Manjari speak. So then, I wrote Prabhupada a letter about the Krishna book. Because it was like, you have an aha moment, you use that word? Aha, an epiphany, aha moment. I had a duh moment. You ever have a duh moment? It's like you finally figure something out that you should have figured out. It's like, duh. That's an American expression. I don't know if you use it here?
Yes.
Yeah. You're as bad as the Americans then, aren't you? So, I had a duh moment. And I was reading Krishna book. So, as I was saying, you can imagine we never knew who Krishna was or what he did. We knew very little about Krishna and what he did. And raised Judeo-Christian, you know nothing about what God does other than punishing people or sending people to heaven, but there's no like Leela. So I'm reading the Krishna book and I have a duh moment, which I thought was an epiphany of deep profundity, that nobody knows who God is but the Hare Krishnas. And I got all excited. Oh my God, we're the only ones who, nobody even knows what he does, what he looks like, where he lives, who's his mother, brother, sister, girlfriend. And I was just going crazy. And I was a temple president, and every month we had to write a letter to Prabhupada and report what we were doing. So in that letter I wrote, like this little kid, Prabhupada, nobody knows who God is, only we do. That's so amazing. Duh. You know. And so I wrote that to Prabhupada. He said, yes. We know. Yes, we know who God is. Something like that. A simple answer. So that was the excitement of the Krishna book, as you can imagine. And we're out there on the street and we're thinking, nobody knows who God is, and it's right here in this book, and we can show you. Hey, you want to know what God looks like? Yeah, like that. You want to know what he does? Yeah, it's in this book. Pretty exciting, don't you think? So, that's the Krishna book. And that's oh. I still have 4 minutes, right? Yeah. Thakur Haridas, this big, tall, extremely enthusiastic Jewish guy. Nothing against Jews. I'm Jewish, so I can say it, right? If you know, I don't know. If you know what that means, he was very Jewish. Very, you know what that means. Like, yeah. I'll just leave it at that. Okay, you can imagine what it means. So, he had come from San Francisco temple. And San Francisco temple was one of the most inspired temples in ISKCON at that time. There were about 25 brahmacharis living there, a few grihastas, a few women. And temple was just on fire with enthusiasm. So Thakur Haridas, he's so enthusiastic and so Jewish. He calls up the temple president because he wants to tell the temple president that we're distributing Krishna books. So he calls up the temple president. He says, we're out on traveling Sankirtan. And the temple president says, so are we. And he says, we fill our van up with Back to Godhead magazines. We don't even have a place to sit in the van. We stay out till we sell them all. And Thakur Haridas goes, you're in Maya. We're selling Krishna books. Get out there and sell Krishna books. And I remember this conversation, which happened, so we're talking about probably 52 years ago, and I remember this conversation as if it's happening right at this moment. And somehow or other, Krishna inspired me to think this is a monumental conversation, because the distribution of Krishna books, it skyrocketed after this conversation, because it was like intimidation, you know. He's intimidated. You're in Maya, you're just distributing Back to God. You should be carrying Krishna books. And the temple president had a brother who was the president or the leader in Los Angeles, so he got intimidated. They started doing it. They realized they could do it, and he called his brother, and then it just... Then all of a sudden, you know, it was like everyone started distributing Krishna books. It was a thing. And devotees would like go to the petrol station and they'd fill up, and these days you pay after, and then they'd say, you know, I can't find any money, but I can give you this book. It's worth $8. And they're like, well, what am I going to do? You know, you can't pay. They would take the book. You know, it was just like everywhere you go shopping, you'd be in the line. Have you seen this book? It was like everybody went nutwallas, if you know what that means. They went crazy to distribute Krishna books. So that's the history. That's how it all happened. Thakur Haridas intimidating the temple president of San Francisco after he discovered how to do it on this traveling Sankirtan party. And I will end with an interesting figure. This will sound really kind of funny to you. But that month, you know, like I say, the average temple would distribute like a Krishna book every once, maybe one a month at a Sunday feast. That was kind of like normal. That month we distributed 60 Krishna books, which was the ISKCON world's record for Krishna book distribution. You know, nowadays people distribute 60 in an hour or something, isn't it? There's a devotee in America, I don't know what planet he's from, but he's like goes out and distributes thousands of books in a day. I don't know how he does it. So that was 60 in 1970 or 71, and that was the world's record of Krishna book distribution. So we've come a long way, but we give you some perspective. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over. Yes?
I'd like to share something about the power of the Krishna book.
Okay.
In 1972, a friend of mine who was under the influence at the time read Krishna book
Oh.
all night through.
Oh.
The next morning, he moved into the Philadelphia temple.
Whoa.
First one out of our crew to move into the temple.
Wow. Hare Krishna. Watch out. When those 14,000 Krishna books get out there, better get some more dhotis and saris ready for them. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.